Hello guys, welcome to the video. John Bodine here with Redemptive Psych. Today we're going to talk about Lex Fridman, the popular podcaster and engineer. And I was researching his type and it came out, a lot of people think he's an INFJ, some people think he's an INTJ. Now I don't usually say this strongly, but there is absolutely no way this guy is an INFJ. INTJ I think is a little bit closer, but we need to figure out what his type is. This is part of a larger pattern of why so many people get mistyped, because we look at broad strokes, broad vectors, and make assumptions off of that. Most people don't know what the cognitive functions are, so they take these shortcuts with the letters and get up with drastically wrong results. Right here on this board, I have his type, and I have an image of why he is mistyped. Okay, so we could spend an hour looking at different clips and whatnot. I'm not here to prove to you exhaustively what he is. I'm going to tell you what I think he is and give you an example. So we're going to look at a couple clips from his more recent podcast with Rogan. There's a great example here of what type he is.
Yeah. Well, it's the situation Genghis Khan was in, you know.
Well, he was doing it a little differently. He was a little bit more forceful.
Actually, I mean, there's a lot of different perspectives on that.
Okay, so a lot of different perspectives on that. That's TE. Okay, a lot of people think that Lex cares a lot about fairness. Yes, depending on how you define it, fairness. But what exactly is he? How does he use this capacity for fairness? Is it more about feeling and evaluating, or is it more about the facts and context, which is extroverted thinking or extroverted feeling?
What's the book on Genghis Khan? So first of all, there's obviously the Dan Carlin, Wrath of the Khans, and in that series of podcasts, he criticizes the book Jack Weatherford. Making of the Modern World. Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World.
He's listing different resources. He's listing the existing conversation. That is historical context. That is extroverted thinking, not extroverted feeling. An INFJ struggles a lot to understand the context that they're in within a academic conversation. So much extroverted thinking right off the bat.
Killed 10% of the population of Earth, lit people on fire, and launched them on catapults onto thatched roofs.
Well, I think actually Dan Carlin makes a really good point. How long do you wait until, you know, that you could tell these kinds of stories about Hitler? I think that's the example he uses.
Yes, that's what he uses.
But, you know, you want to be historically accurate here. And Genghis Khan, there's a lot of different perspectives, including opening up trade and including what was the protocol based on which he was doing the murdering.
Okay, what was the protocol based on which he was doing the murdering? He's again talking about context. He's talking about the rules. He's trying to correct the historical context of Genghis Khan. And it sounds like he's defending him, which, as we'll see in a minute, makes Fridman a little bit embarrassed. But what he's doing is he's offering an objective perspective. He's trying to insert some facts, some context to correct the perception of this man as just being some mindless tyrant and give some actual detailed nuance, which is very hard to do with a tyrant, because as soon as you start doing that, people think that you're being a sympathizer. This is also an example of extroverted feeling trickster or demon, lower extroverted feeling, not understanding initially that this is kind of socially off limits to go into. To most people, their reaction is going to be to socially judge you because it's not socially acceptable. That kind of obliviousness is even more so with high SI users and low FE.
There were so many dead bodies that the roads had deteriorated into muck.
Yeah, let me actually sort of backtrack a little bit here, because I'm uncomfortable because I'm deeply involved in the military affairs of modern day, and so there's I was just kind of having fun.
Okay, very, very, very important here. Look how quickly he's aware of his discomfort and that he's willing to share that, okay? Again, a little FE trickster, not framing it in any particular way. He's just sharing that he's uncomfortable. That is an introverted sensing experience, something that the IJs, that the ISJs do all the time. They're aware of their internal experience. He realizes now, it's a little too late, he realizes now that it looks bad. So he's evaluating how he feels, and he's evaluating his own body. He sees that he's uncomfortable. Again, he recognizes that this narrative these facts that he's talking about makes him look bad. So now he's backtracking, trying to fix the perspective, realizing that he's more embarrassed than he intended to be.
Yes, there was mass murder
Yeah.
that was happening. It was vicious. And I'm not a scholar of Genghis Khan.
He's trying to unembarrass himself. He is validating that yes, he was vicious, he was a mass murderer, all these labels from an FI child saying, yes, this was wrong, yes, this was wrong. He's trying to regain, he's basically managing his credibility in the conversation in order to avoid people judging him as a certain thing.
I was simply saying that it's interesting how history looks at these different empires. For example, we venerate the Roman Empire. Not we, but ancient Greece. And they were equally, if not more, brutal in their conquests and their destruction.
Okay, this is a great move by him. This is TE expertise here, okay? So he's trying to dig himself out of the hole a little bit, which will only be effective to some viewers. What's very effective here with his TE awareness of, hey, let me think of an example of where other people make the mistake that I just made, but that's acceptable, and that is the Romans and the Greeks, the Spartans. He didn't mention the Spartans, but they're right there. That these people, these groups are venerized, are viewed in a whole different light as civilized, right? But they did potentially just as barbaric things as the Mongols. This is a great TE move to reform the narrative and to challenge us, the audience, to reflect on our own perspective, which for more people will then allow them to not judge Lex for kind of this social faux pas of talking about Genghis Khan. Okay, guys, I think Lex Fridman is clearly an ISTJ. Honestly, I think this one, if you know functions, okay, and you're aware of how types develop, how their functions can be more preferred, to me, this is pretty obvious, okay? I think there's a lot of other people out there that are really hard to type. I think that this guy is one of the simpler ones. I don't see people typing an ISTJ anywhere. I think he's clearly an ISTJ. And the most important word, the single most important word to describe Lex Fridman is impartial. Just spend 5 minutes listening to him interview, or perhaps you already are familiar with him. This guy is so impartial. He's basically a judicial, impartial interviewer, which is one of the reasons that allows him to have such controversial guests on. He's willing to take that leap. Now, one reason people think he's some, intuitive, particularly an INFJ, because he's very idealistic about his idea of love being the answer to everything. That is FI child idealism, okay? This inner innocence that is hoping for a future. Yes, that's technically abstract, but that is a small piece of what he does. People take that, talking about love, 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 and they think that ISTJs, because they're a T-type, whatever that means, that they don't have a capacity for feeling. The ITJs often get mistyped as high feeling users because of FI child. Okay, this is the reason he is mistyped, is because he's developed into his FI and NE, giving him the impression of having more, he has more access to his FI child and NE inferior than ISTJs developed into in different ways, making him look kind of like an IJ with some more feeling and or some more abstraction. Hence, people think he's an INFJ or an INTJ. No, Lex Fridman, I believe, is an ISTJ, developed more into his ideal and abstract functions. All right, guys, thanks for stopping by. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye.